"O Lord, forgive me for what I'm about to do," Elias whispered, his voice hoarse with grief and rage. He lunged across the courtroom, his aged body surprisingly strong, and grabbed the white man by the throat. His fingers tightened, cutting off the man's air. The man, a notorious serial killer who had confessed to ending the lives of over 20 black girls, including Elias's 5-year-old daughter, Precious, struggled weakly. The courtroom erupted, security guards surged forward, ready to intervene. But the judge, his face etched with sorrow, raised a hand. "Leave him alone," he commanded, his voice trembling slightly. "Let him fulfill his desires. It is perhaps the only way this man will ever find peace on this earth. He has lost his only daughter, a child he managed to have after being sterile for over 50 years. The judge's words hung heavy in the air. He knew the depths of Elias's pain, the unimaginable loss that had driven him to this desperate act. He knew that no amount of legal justice could ever truly compensate for the life that had been so brutally taken. Elias's grip tightened, the man's eyes bulged, his face turning purple. The courtroom fell silent, everyone watching the tragic scene unfold. Finally, the man went limp. Elias released his hold, his body shaking with sobs. He had taken a life, but in that moment, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of release, however fleeting. He was arrested and charged with murder. He offered no resistance, his spirit broken. He was later brought to trial. The judge, his own eyes filled with tears, acknowledged the extraordinary circumstances of the case. He spoke of the immense tragedy Elias had suffered, the unbearable loss of his only child, his Precious. And then, he began to tell Elias's story. Elias had known the gnawing emptiness for as long as he could remember. It was a hollow ache in his heart, a constant reminder of the dream that remained stubbornly out of reach, the dream of fatherhood. He and his wife, Sarah, had been married for 28 years. They had visited countless doctors, endured numerous tests, and explored every avenue of treatment, but nothing worked. The diagnosis was always the same: Elias was infertile. The words felt like a death knell to his soul. He watched other men, younger men, fathers with children clinging to their legs, and ached with a longing so profound it was almost physical pain. Sarah, a woman of unwavering faith, never gave up hope. She prayed fervently, clinging to the belief that a miracle would happen. Elias, though he loved Sarah deeply, found it hard to share her optimism. He had grown accustomed to the quiet despair, the constant ache of unfulfilled fatherhood. One Sunday, while watching a televised church service, something shifted within him. The preacher spoke of the power of unwavering faith, of the miracles that could happen when one truly believed. Elias, his heart heavy with years of disappointment, found himself listening intently. He closed his eyes and prayed, a simple, heartfelt prayer born of desperation and a flicker of renewed hope. "Lord," he whispered, "if you grant me this one desire, if you bless me with a child, I will dedicate my life to serving you." Months passed, and nothing seemed to change. Elias tried to push the fleeting hope away, to bury it beneath the familiar weight of disappointment. But then, Sarah started feeling unwell. At first, they dismissed it as fatigue, but the feeling persisted. A visit to the doctor confirmed what they had almost given up hoping for: Sarah was pregnant. Elias was stunned. He couldn't believe it. After all these years, after so much heartache, a miracle had happened. Tears streamed down his face, tears of joy, of relief, of disbelief. He fell to his knees, thanking God for this incredible blessing. The pregnancy was difficult. Sarah, at 48, was considered to be of advanced maternal age, and there were concerns about potential complications. But Sarah's faith was unwavering, and Elias was by her side every step of the way, offering his unwavering love and support. Finally, the day arrived. After a long and arduous labor, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Precious, for she was indeed the most precious gift they had ever received. Elias's life was transformed. The emptiness was gone, replaced by a love so profound it filled his entire being. He spent every waking moment with Precious, cradling her in his arms, singing her lullabies, and watching her grow. He was a doting father, completely besotted by his little girl. He kept his promise to God. He became deeply involved in his local church, donating generously to charitable causes, and even helping to build new churches in his community. He was a changed man, his heart overflowing with gratitude. Precious was a bright and bubbly child, full of energy and curiosity. She loved her father dearly, and their bond was something special. She would sit on his lap for hours, listening to him tell stories, her eyes wide with wonder. She loved to play in the park with him, swinging high on the swings, and chasing after pigeons. She was his little princess, his precious gift. Years passed, and Precious blossomed into a beautiful young girl. She was intelligent and kind, a joy to be around. Elias cherished every moment with her, knowing how blessed he was to have her in his life. One sunny afternoon, Precious was coming home from school. She stepped off the bus, her bright smile lighting up the street. As she walked towards her house, a white van pulled up beside her. A man stepped out, a man with cold, empty eyes. He spoke to her, his voice deceptively gentle. Precious, trusting and innocent, didn't suspect a thing. The man lured her into the van. Elias, watching from the porch, felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. He ran towards the van, shouting for Precious, but it was too late. The van sped away, leaving him standing there, his heart pounding with fear. He called the police immediately, his voice trembling with panic. The police launched a massive search, but it was hours before they found the van. It was parked in a deserted area in a neighboring town. Inside, they found Precious. She was gone. The man had ended her life. Elias's world shattered. The joy, the gratitude, the love that had filled his heart for so many years were replaced by an unbearable pain, a grief so profound it threatened to consume him. He couldn't understand it. Why had this happened? Why had God taken his precious gift away? The man, a known white supremacist and serial killer, was apprehended a few hours later. He had confessed to ending the lives of over 20 black children. He was brought to trial, his face devoid of any remorse. And that brings us back to the courtroom, to Elias's desperate act of vengeance, and the judge's reluctant understanding. The judge, having recounted Elias's heartbreaking story, turned to the jury. His voice was thick with emotion. You have heard the testimony, seen the evidence. You have witnessed the profound grief that has driven this man to commit this act. He has lost his precious gift, a child he waited for and cherished for so long. He has suffered a loss that no parent should ever have to endure. He paused, looking at Elias, who sat slumped in his chair, his eyes hollow. The law demands justice, but it also demands understanding. It demands compassion. Consider all these things as you deliberate. The jury retired, and the courtroom waited in tense silence. Hours later, they returned. The foreman stood, his face grave. We, the jury, find the defendant, Elias, guilty of manslaughter. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Elias remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor. The judge cleared his throat. Elias, he said, his voice trembling, the jury has found you guilty. I understand the pain you have endured. I understand the rage that consumed you. But the law must be upheld. However, he paused, wiping a tear from his eye. Given the extraordinary circumstances of this case, and the profound loss you have suffered, I sentence you to 1 year in prison. The sentence was met with a mixture of gasps and murmurs. It was a lenient sentence, a recognition of the immense tragedy that had befallen Elias. Elias was taken to prison. The days were long and empty. He thought of Precious constantly, her bright smile, her infectious laughter. He remembered the joy she had brought into his life, the love that had filled his heart. But now, that joy was gone, replaced by an unbearable ache. He couldn't reconcile the love he felt for God with the cruel fate that had befallen his daughter. He had prayed for a miracle, and he had received one. But then, that miracle had been snatched away, leaving him more broken than before. 2 weeks into his sentence, the guards found Elias dead in his cell. He had taken his own life. He couldn't bear the pain any longer. His precious was gone, and he had nothing left to live for. The news of Elias's death spread quickly. Many mourned his passing, understanding the despair that had driven him to such a desperate act. They understood the profound love he had felt for his daughter, and the unbearable grief that had consumed him after her death. Sarah, devastated by the loss of both her husband and her daughter, retreated into her faith. She found solace in the belief that Precious and Elias were together again, in a better place. The story of Elias and Precious became a legend, a tragic tale of love, loss, and the devastating consequences of hate. It was a story that served as a reminder of the preciousness of life, the importance of love, and the enduring power of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. It was a story that echoed through the years, a haunting reminder of the cost of prejudice and the enduring pain of loss. It was a story that whispered the question, how much can one heart bear?